So, yeah, so we talked about Jim's got a run here. Next month, we're doing the theme Game B for the whole month. And so Jim's got to run in about 15 minutes, but what would you say you are in Game B? The founder? Is that how you would describe that, or?
One of the group of co-founders. There was about a dozen of us that started Game B in January 2013, kind of rose from the ashes of a futile attempt to start a new political party. And so I don't think any one person should claim ownership of it. It was certainly a group effort.
How Game B of you did not claim ownership.
Yeah, there's a good video on Rebel Wisdom where Brett Weinstein and I talk about the history of it, and we talk about the various characters that were involved, etc.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Awesome. All right. So did we want to just throw it to Jim for a bit?
Yeah.
I wasn't part of that conversation, so I don't really know what's happening there. But then we'll jump into the building conversation. And we've got a lot of expert builders in the call right now. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, so I just wanted to invite Jim for a quick bit here to introduce the Proto-B incubator that he's running right now. And then we'll have him on for a more detailed Q&A, or maybe we'll come to the next summit for more information. But yeah, just a quick intro.
All right. Yeah, we've recently started up a new project, just a couple of weeks old, called the Proto-B incubator. Proto-B is our name for the idea of building on-the-ground communities that align themselves with Game B values, whatever that means. And Game B is not well defined. It's a kind of a big church, broad concept, but does have some basic principles around self-organization, living within the constraints of the world, developing better ways for people to self-organize and develop network-based structures at every scale, from the household all the way up to eventually global. I believe this is a big inflection point for Game B, which has been, frankly, from my perspective, a little too mired in theory. And I think when we move from theory to practice, we'll find some of our theory is full of shit, no surprise there. And we'll also find a bunch of things we didn't even consider. I'm a great believer that when you start doing, you can see things you couldn't see before you started doing. And so with that spirit, we put this together. And the idea is essentially to do two things at once. One is to build a framework for how one thinks about and plans a Proto-B. And by the way, if those want to see more definition about Proto-B, I wrote a paper called A Journey to Game B. That lays out a fair amount of what a Proto-B is. I'll see if I can find that and put it in the chat box. Journey to Game B, Jim Rutt. I'll probably find it. There it goes. It's getting pretty popular.
By the way, we have a wiki up now, futurethinkers.org/wiki, and we're going to be adding all the notes from this conversation and all future conversations to that doc, or to that wiki.
Great. So anyway, as I get back to what the goal of the Proto-B incubator is twofold. One is to develop a framework for planning, designing, and thinking about building a Proto-B or on-the-ground community. And the model is that it's a high-dimensional space. You have to think about location. You have to think about size. You have to think about economic base. You have to think about entry rules. You have to think about financial structures. You have to think about governance. You have to think about how connected one's going to be to Game A. How self-reliant are you going to be with respect to power and water and food? And we're trying not to be dogmatic there, rather that we want to lay out the design space and suggest that people try different places in the design space. I don't believe we know enough yet to say that this is the answer. It's also very important to realize that every location will have different opportunities and challenges, and the design needs to be very centric to the reality of the location. So again, this is not an idea of how to create a formula, but rather a framework to think about how one designs a Game B. Next, we're bringing in gradually expertise in different dimensions. So far, we have people with expertise in construction, particularly of alternative construction, education. We have Zach Stein on board as a thinker and resource on education. We have Daniel Schmachtenberger on board as a resource for game B theory, so we can define at least a little bit about what does it mean to be a Proto-B versus some other form of intentional community. We have Mark Fraser on board. Hi, Mark, who's an expert on community land trusts and other forms of cooperative-based organization. I'm about to bring on another education expert. I hope soon to get on board one of the world's leading authorities on governance for alternative organizations, who is very, very clever, somebody you will know. I hope he'll say yes. Also reaching out to a lawyer who specializes in financial structures for beneficial organizations like co-ops, and has done some very clever work with hybrid co-op structures, et cetera. And I'm even trying to reel in, that's fishing rod there in my hand, if the resolution isn't high enough, a commercial banker who can actually provide guidance to the broader community on, under what scenarios is it worth one's time to put together a loan proposal and actually talk to commercial bankers. And the answer is, in many cases, it's not worth your time. But if you think about it carefully and at the right stage of a project, it may be worth your time. So having a just retired 37-year veteran of big community bank, 250 million in asset bank, I think would be a real useful thing. And another one that I hope to add soon is a real expert on small and medium-sized sewer and water. And hey, that doesn't sound nearly as sexy as education or governance, but let me tell you, you get sewer and water wrong in your Proto-B and you're fucked, right? You may be able to find your way out of a legal problem, but you got to have a little bit of fecal matter in your water supply, and you're going to wish you didn't do that. So I think that's an extraordinarily important resource to have. And so then we bring it, we have the framework, we have the experts, and then we invite people who are thinking about or in the process of launching a Proto-B, and we provide, like many incubators do, guidance and help them marshal resources, do introductions, et cetera. At some point, we might even have a network to help bring together people who are interested in doing the earliest stages of financing for these things. Haven't got to that state yet, like to at some point. This project's actually the first real project that's been invited to join the incubator, and Yubi and Mike have joined the incubator. They've been tied up trying to get their project launched. They haven't been too active in it yet, but I expect to see a lot more of them in the future. And my personal goal is to see at least 3 Proto-Bs actually get successfully launched by the end of 2021. And I believe, based on the interest all around, that will require some serious work, some serious planning, and some serious commitment from people, both from the experts and from the community builders. But I think it's realistic. So that's what the Proto-B incubator is all about. And your project here, will be part of it.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Awesome introduction, and so happy to be part of this.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in this call I can see right now that actually would be interested in chatting with you, or might be a good connection, is also facilitators, teachers, content providers, James Ehrlich being one of them. We've done a podcast episode with him, which I will link to right here. You can check out founder of ReGen Villages. Actually, maybe Jim, just take, or James, just take a moment here to introduce you.
Just want to say hi to Jim, because Jim and I had a very lovely conversation.
Oh, great.
And he actually promised not to curse so much in my call, but he couldn't hold back. But because we discovered I'm from New York originally, so to me it's just these are just adverbs, you know what I mean? So in any case, it's great to see you again, Jim, and to see you in this group and like-minded, wonderful people. So hi.
Howdy.
Cool. So on to the subject of today's call. We are going to be doing...
I'm going to head out.
Sure. Thanks, Jim, for joining us.
Thanks for
Thank-
popping
It
It was
by.
nice meeting you, Jim.
Yeah, if you guys could round up who I ought to talk to about possible inclusion in the incubator, I'd appreciate it.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you
Happy
later.
trails.
Cool. So yeah, today we're talking about building methods, building materials, different types of buildings. And I know that JM, Jean-Marc Laflamme over there on the left, has done a lot of work to get people into this call, a lot of connections here. So I'm going to hand it over to JM to make some introductions first.
Super, yeah, and I'm just kind of going through to see who joined there, and maybe what we'll do is just give everybody the chance, all the builders, manufacturers, to kind of step up and introduce yourselves for a few minutes. I see Don Kubley and Kent here, Daryl Fry, and James Ehrlich, of course, and who else is here on the call who's a builder, manufacturer? Anybody else I didn't call out?
Torch
Okay.
Timbers.
Torch and Timber, oh yeah, right on, Brandon. Torch and Timber, tiny homes and shipping container homes out of the Kootenays. That's fantastic. Awesome, okay. What's that? Okay, super. Well, we'll start with Don Kubley. Don, Intershelter. Why don't you give us a 2-minute intro here?
Jean-Marc, are you ready for the elevator pitch?
Yes, sir.
Folks, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at my website. It's www.innershelter.com. I have a building that is as portable, mobile, and quickly erected as a tent. And once you have it up, it'll be there 40 years from now, if you want it to be. Or you can break it down in a half an hour, put it in the back of your pickup truck, and redeploy it in a matter of minutes. They're hurricane proof, they're earthquake proof, they'll take a 30-foot snow load. And for people in Northern Canada, we're in all 7 of Parks Canada Arctic parks because they're bear proof. We are in polar bear country, grizzly country, brown bear country, black bear country, have been for 30 years, and I've never had a bear in one of our domes. When you live where I live, as you can see from behind me, being in a place where you can sleep sound and not worry about bears is a big deal. Our buildings are excellent for homeless community, to transitional housing units, first responders, disaster relief. Mike, for some reason I'm seeing you on constantly, Mike. Maybe that's supposed to be.
It's okay.
Anyway, we had a homeless community in downtown LA for 15 years. It was the most successful homeless village in the country the whole time it was in existence, as far as non-recidivism, getting people back into their families, back into their jobs, back into their houses. And one of the things that we found over the years, and there's no scientific studies that to document this, but one of my degrees is in sociology, and my theory is this: if you walk up to a guy, say in Washington D.C., in the middle of winter, they get fairly cold there. It's wet. It's in the 20s and 30s, and if you walk up to some guy that's laying under a cardboard box on a steam grate, trying to stay warm, and you say, "Hey Joe, why don't you come down to the homeless shelter on the corner and I got a warm bed and a hot meal for you." A good majority of people that are laying in that street will say, "Get the heck away from me. I don't want anything to do with you. I'm not going in that building." One of the things they found is that a high percentage of people with that mindset will fight to get into a dome. And there's no rhyme or reason. The only one I can think of is they can't be cornered. And you've got a nice high ceiling above you. They're very, very spacious and roomy, and they feel comfortable in them. And I don't mean to sound like an old hippie here, but that's all I am. There's something special about being inside a dome. And it's a very peaceful, easy feeling, going back to my favorite band. And I think for the project that Flame and Mark has shared with me, I think these could be a good fit and part of the answer. One of the other great things about our buildings is they're maintenance free, period. When it rains, it cleans them off. You never have to varnish them. You never have to paint them. You don't have to worry about termites or bugs. There's bug screens on all the windows and doors. So what you have is a building that goes up as fast as a tent, but it's past residential building codes in some of the strictest places on earth, like Los Angeles, like Honolulu. They've got the strictest building codes on the planet. For a building that is that versatile and that easily erected, 3 people, no skills whatsoever, with 2 screwdrivers and a wrench, to be able to put up a house that'll be there decades or generations from now is an incredible situation. And I think we are the answer to a lot of the problems. And by the way, just as a point of interest, I own the domain name tinytown.com. So it kind of goes along with what you guys are doing north of the border there.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. That's really great. I'll save the questions for after everybody does their little minute pitch there. I guess next here, Ian, did you want to chat about Nomad out of Vancouver, BC?
Hi there, everybody. Yeah, great to join. We are the manufacturers of the Nomad micro home, or the Nomad Cube. And the Cube is about 180 square feet on the main floor and about 120 square feet in the loft. And it is kind of like the IKEA house. So if you were to go to IKEA to buy a house, it would be manufactured, assembled, and delivered to wherever you are worldwide. And that's one thing that we like to talk about, is that because our unit is flat packed, it can be delivered any place in the world. And the components are made using computer driven machinery. So everything is deadly accurate and fast. And when you get it on site, we've got it honed down to, like a much better set of instructions than you'd find from IKEA. I find furniture actually difficult to build, but I think we've actually done a pretty great job with our really comprehensive set of instructions. And essentially the same two guys, cordless drills, and we were very pleased to see some of our clients just in the last year being able to erect the shell. This is a fully building code compliant structure as well, but more like a permanent home, a little more traditional shape than a dome, and sits on a permanent foundation and so on. But they were able to put the shell together in about 3 to 5 days. The interior finish, plumbing and electrical is done on site. So that enables us to, also enables us to sell it worldwide. We're not a CSA approved factory builder because it is flat packed. And I think that's an advantage because there's a lot of parts of the country that have different regulations when it comes to plumbing and electrical. And really it's only about a 1 or 2 day job to install the rough-in and then the finish on this little unit. The unit is also modular in design, so you could move into it as a self-contained home with a full kitchen, full height appliances. It has a 3-piece bathroom with a shower. It has storage built in and 300 square feet of living space. But as your family grows, you could buy another one. And we have an attachment piece called Nomad Connect that allows you to build or buy and assemble a second one or a third one, as many as you want, to connect them together. And it starts to create different floor layouts. Like one that was a full-time house could then become a living room kitchen, or sorry, a dining kitchen. And then the other part would be a living room or a bedroom ensuite. We have been quite successful in the last little while. We're still a young company, but we've been selling dozens of them throughout Canada and the United States. We just shipped off another one to California, which is a pretty hot market right now because of the ADU regulations being lowered down there by the state of California. All up and down the West Coast is a great market for ADUs now. So we're active and commercialized. We've got our product very refined, and it's a very straightforward build. The steel structure that, the steel framing that makes up the structural part of the building is produced by a 3D technology, 3D print technology. It's actually a 3D roll form machine. So raw product goes in one end and then the actual components come out the other, all computer driven. So we can print one of our houses in about 20 minutes for the structure. And the outside finish of the house and insulation and all the rest of the components that make up a building code compliant wall, roof, and floor are also cut with CNC technology, so for window and door openings and so on. So everything is zeroed in with computers. They all talk, each design is coordinated with the next, so there's no conflict over that. And it can roll on a 53-foot flat deck truck, or actually a single can go in about a 40-foot truck, and pretty much anywhere across North America. And it can also go in a shipping container, of course. Nomadmicrohomes.com is the website if you're interested.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks so much, Ian, for joining us here. I know it's a busy time, and it's really great to have Canadian builders here and representing, including Brandon. I wonder if you wanted to pipe up about torch and timber, tiny houses, and shipping container homes. Are you there, Brandon?
Hello.
Hey, there you are. How's it going?
Pretty good. Yeah, that's an interesting technology going along here. It's cool. So we started up a couple years ago doing a CCAN. We just did a show model for ourselves. So we just set on Airbnb to kind of put it in the climate and see how it would do. And it's done pretty well in terms of keeping it warm, keeping it affordable, and just getting a good response from anyone staying in it. So we've gone from our one 40-foot design to having, we've changed a little bit just to change the layout. So we've got a standard 40-footer with a 20-foot addition. So if you can, if you need to get a mortgage to start with an initial starter home, given the cost of housing in BC, you can start with one of these and then add on your 20s as your family expands or as your needs require. And each unit comes with its own panel and HRV system. You can pop it off and sell it if you don't need all the space. But we're designing them so you put one on the top or on the side as you do. We've got a few different layouts depending on the location. We found a few of the people that were interested in are 40. We couldn't. Of course, if you're in a tiny home, you want to put it on the top of a mountain or some remote spot. So we couldn't get a 40-foot can into a lot of the places. So we've designed one with 20-footers where we can stagger them. You still get the square footage, but with a different layout. And so we're just in the process of getting the rest of our designs kind of out on the market. We're pretty new. We've still just built our initial show model and have some designs. So we're in the process of getting our name out there and working with a couple of clients for next summer. So we'll see how that goes. But so far we've had a pretty good response from the people that have at least stayed in this one and visited and talked with us. So yeah, man, we're pretty new. So
great, awesome to have you, Brandon. Maybe we should move over to the manufacturing side. We got Norbert Conrad. Maybe Norbert, you want to talk about Hamel Creek timber frames?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Good to be here. So we are located in Meadow Creek. We build mainly custom-made timber homes. So far, not much tiny, more big, but we have done a few cabins. We have our own sawmill with side products, you know, and we are in business since almost 30 years doing pretty intricate timber frame homes. It needs a little bit more than a screwdriver and a wrench to put towers together, but you definitely don't need a saw because everything is CNC machined. So if you touch a saw, you get the slap on the finger from us. So we do bigger timbers, smaller timbers. We do hybrids, which are quite a lot of people are using those because it elevates the house. You know, kitchen, living room area is timber framed, and then all the rest of the house can be in a hybrid, in a traditional stick frame, or potentially with new materials, which I'm really interested in finding out what else is available.
And for those of you who don't know, Norbert is the current owner of the property that we're going to be using for the Future Thinkers Smart Village. So he's actually partnered with us as well, offering his expertise from how many years on the farm? Since 96?
96, yeah. This was just year 24.
Yeah. And, you know, had said to us at one point that he had a vision that was quite similar to what we've had, and that's why he's chosen to partner with us. So, yeah, thank you, Norbert.
Thank you guys for coming to the property and meeting with me, because that was an exciting day, and there's more to come.
Yeah.
Awesome. And we've got Daryl Fry here from ABC3D, Advanced Biocarbon Materials Supply. Maybe Daryl, you want to give a quick pitch? Daryl, are you there?
Yeah. Inviting me to the very honored. Are you not hearing me, Jean-Marc?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Unfortunately, yeah, sorry, that's a little bit of internet instability. Anyways, so I'd just like to thank everyone for the presentations and talks you guys have given so far. I'm learning a real lot from all of you. It's very, very interesting to hear what's going on with the project. So I'm the CEO of a company called Advanced Biocarbon 3D. We make sustainable advanced materials from bioproducts or from biomass. So our main, one of the main technologies that we have is we're making sustainable polymers that you can 3D print with. As manufacturing with 3D printing advances, we are hoping to 3D print homes with our materials. And the materials we can build in the characteristics that you need within a home, including the materials that are electrically conductive, thermally conductive, and also have an R factor. So all of those things are possible. And today we are, of course, still at a very small level and still prototyping a lot of these products. But within the next few years, we feel that we will be able to provide projects like this one with homes that are 3D printed from advanced materials that are in the, I didn't really talk too much about how they're sustainable, but what we do is we are using the components of the biomass to create the polymers with, and we don't actually change the biomass itself. So if we're using wood, we're separating it into its native forms of lignin and cellulose and hemicellulose. And because we're not chemically modifying it or changing it, when it is exposed to the earth, then the microbes in the earth can recognize it and decompose it. So anyways, I think that's enough for now. So thanks very much, Jean-Marc. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Daryl. Daryl, also another BC company, so it's great to have the representation. Yeah, anybody else I'm missing here? Builder, manufacturer?
John Mark, could I add just one thing
Yeah, for sure, Don.
to my kickoff? I failed to mention a couple things that these other gentlemen have reminded me of. The ability to interconnect my buildings is very similar to the gentleman that has the containers. You can have 5 windows and 5 doors in any building, and so you can connect them together in any configuration you want as your family grows, or as your office grows, or to stay inside in Arctic conditions. Very popular one by the military and Doctors Without Borders is a center dome in the middle, and then 4 domes connected around it. It looks like a clover leaf from above. So I've got a guy in Texas that has 11 of them connected together. That's one thing that I failed to mention. And when he mentioned flat pack, I realized that I also didn't mention that in the same amount of space it takes to move that gentleman's 40-foot container, I can move 10 of my buildings. They also flat pack. Our shipping footprint is extremely small. And it's one of the things that when you're in very remote places, right now we're putting 5 buildings up in the village that's the most northern community in all of Canada. I can't pronounce the Inuit name, but it's the furthest north. That's it. Yeah, that's it. We're putting 5 of them up there. They just put up the 5th one today. So the more remote, the more extreme the location, the better they perform, even though, as I mentioned, they work just fine in downtown LA too. But I just wanted to mention the flat packing, the small footprint, and the ability to interconnect as you grow.
Super important. Shipping, of course, and modular, so that you can start small and expand into something bigger. All of these things are great with the people that are on the call here today. Yeah, I guess James, would you have any questions for these fine builders? James Ehrlich, do you have any thoughts and impressions on the technology on the call here?
It's all looks all very cool and interesting. I mean, depending upon place and location and space and requirements. I just prior to this call, I got off the phone with or a Zoom call with a group in Tofino that is very constricted in their ability to build a larger neighborhood community as the context that we would usually go for. But they definitely looking for something more modular, and these what I've just seen here, they could easily shop, I think, from this group and find pieces that would work quite well in those communities. So we find that quite a lot. There's places where you need to sort of roll in and sort of keep the wheels on because of the way the zoning is. Places where you need rapid deployment, and places where, like I said, you're just constricted for space. And overall, I think that I've liked what I've seen so far. We've looked into all different kinds of prefab, modular construction. The main driver for us is social affordable housing. It's the main driver, but also, to be perfectly honest, it has to do with circular building materials. And what I mean by that is really that they are earthen and that they can be used several times after someone lives in the house. In the lifetime of those building materials can be used again and again, or in context of like hempcrete, can be chopped up and turned into compost. So those are essentially the tenets of our requirements for building materials and in prefab and construction. And we've looked into the container customized industry. We've looked into a myriad of interesting dome shape structures, and there's a few of those providers out there that we've seen as well, and new ones that are emerging with some interesting ceramic based polymer earthen material kind of shell. So there's some interesting, at least also for cladding, I lived in a Bucky Fuller dome for about a decade, and so I really know what's great about it, and also know what's complicated about it. And you kind of need to have those other pieces associated with it and connected to it to sort of create.
If I just as a point of interest, the gentleman that invented my buildings, I did not do that. I'm as mechanical as a stump. But I was fortunate enough to meet a genius in my college days that did invent it, and he used to hang around with Buckminster Fuller. He called him Bucky, and they would sit around his geodesics doing doobies and talking about saving the world. And Buckminster Fuller told him, "You'll never build a spherical dome that has structural integrity." And they've got to be geodesic, which, you know, they're cool because once you're in them, they're in a dome, but they're very difficult to build, as you know, especially if you're using regular building materials. And they're very labor intensive, and you've got to be pretty darn good at being a contractor or a builder. And they were notorious for leaking. Yeah. The one cool thing about them was once you got them built and once you're in them, like, you know, you're in a dome, which is special. But what Craig did was he took the geodesic and he made it spherical. So these 21 panels, they stack like Pringles potato chips. And so a 320 square foot building goes into a stack about 3 feet high. It's an amazing thing to watch that little stack go into a building that's 12 feet high and 20 feet across. But Buckminster Fuller was his inspiration.
What's the primary building material for your dome? Just
it's
curious.
fiberglass. It's very, very high tech fiberglass composite. Okay. It's the latest generation.
Right. Okay.
And then if you need it insulated, we have an insulation package from a separate vendor that comes pre-cut and pops right in. If you look at my website, the glamping page, that one at the South Pole, white desert, they charge $10,000 a day per person to stay in igloos and play with penguins at 25 below zero, so you know they're warm in there.
Yeah.
So they're good in the heat, and they're good in the cold.
Yeah, we've also just, and it might be interesting for you to connect with these folks from GeoShip, because GeoShip has they've invented an earthen ceramic composite that would replace your fiberglass, and so it's a fantastic carbon sink, and it's fire resistant and flame retardant, and I mean fire resistant and earthquake, seismic proof, hurricane resistant, all those attributes. But it could be an interesting building component. I
appreciate that advice. I'll check them out. Thank you.
So they're just rolling out, I think, their first prototype now, but their main business really is in the cladding. I think that's a very smart place for them to be. And we're looking closely at that as they evolve. I'm a big fan of prefab mass timber. Personally, I find that to be very beautiful. The current state of the art is like, I think, 22-floor residential tower in Norway, including the elevator shafts, all 100% mass timber. And I think it's a very good, solid place for BC to expand and grow these kinds of businesses. So we are, from ReGen Villages perspective, quite agnostic in both architectural and building component at this moment. Like I said, as long as it checks those boxes of earthen material and prefab and cost, then and circularity, then from our perspective. And also, of course, the ability to deliver several hundred homes per community, and in some kind of a mass-produced way.
After Hurricane Dorian, we delivered 250 of the larger 20-foot domes in about 3 months, 2.5 months. But the beautiful thing about fiberglass is to increase production is almost like turning up a stereo. I've got a facility ready to go that could be up in the 1,000 domes a month within 6 weeks.
Yeah, I don't deny that, you know, especially for disaster relief and for homeless, and for other kinds of ADU structures, that's a cool possibility, you know, to look at.
Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, I'll turn it back over to Mike and UV there, if you guys wanted to.
Before you go, Jean-Marc, could I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
Where in the heck are you? Where is that a picture behind you, or do you actually have domes behind you?
Those are domes indeed, Don. You're quite right. And that is a ReGen Village right here. James.
Right. That's real?
Yeah, not real yet, but soon to be coming.
Oh, I got you. It's
Community near
beautiful.
you.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thanks.
Cool. So I think if we're done with introductions here, we can open it up to questions in the audience here. And probably we should introduce a little bit of the smart village that we're working on here for anyone who doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start with that?
Sure. Yeah, so we're working on building a physical smart village in rural British Columbia in the Kootenay region. And we're currently in fundraising mode, and we've just put the deposit down on the property. It's 107 acres and beautiful mountain valley. So we're currently exploring different building styles, and haven't decided yet exactly what kinds of buildings we're going to have there, but we'll probably have a variety. We are quite agnostic when it comes to building and a lot of the processes. And that's because part of our vision is to kind of have a lab for testing and prototyping different technologies, different buildings, different social structures, different governance structures for what could be something that could scale across the world. Not necessarily in the exact same permutation that we're doing it, but figuring out the principles that could scale globally for creating smart villages everywhere in all kinds of different regions and conditions. So do you have anything to add to that?
A few calls to action. We are looking for partners and advisors and funding. So we're partially funded now. We're just looking to raise the remaining. We need to raise 1.3 for the property and 2 million for
Canadian million.
the full development of the next year. What else can I say here? We're going to be experimenting with different kind of economic models on the property as well. And we're looking at blockchain cryptocurrencies as one of those options. So this is something we're developing right now. I'm going to have a presentation that hopefully within the next couple of days I'll have finished. And then I'm going to be chatting with Jim Rutt, the guy who presented at the very beginning. And we're going to figure out ways, like kind of alternative ways to fund this project. So you should be able to find all of that information. I'll make sure the main landing page for the Smart Village is updated at futurethinkers.org/village. And yeah, if you'd like to be part of it, and if you'd like to help us with the funding for it, you can go to that page and hit the contribute button. And then there's a form that you can fill out.
Could I make a suggestion on that?
Sure.
On the funding part of it? Even though I'm not on your side of the border, I'm aware that just yesterday, Prime Minister Trudeau committed $500 million for homeless communities. And I know that Premier BC is not in Ford's a province, but I know that BC, which is where your property is going to get a chunk of money. So to go with your team, you mentioned investment bankers and what have you. I would, before I bought InnerShelter for 30 years, I was a lobbyist here in Juneau and in Washington, D.C. And I know that's kind of a dirty word for most people, but it all depends on who you lobby for. I lobby for communities, Ketchikan, Wrangell, Petersburg, the Gateway Borough, Kodiak, the Island Borough. I'd get money for schools and roads and harbors and sewer systems. That's what I did. And I know that there's people like that in British Columbia that are governmental liaisons that know the powers that be that can access those funds. So I'm not that critter because my whole network is in Alaska and Washington, D.C. But I would strongly recommend that you go find me in British Columbia, because they will access that money for you.
Awesome. Thanks for the recommendation. We should actually jump on a call sometime, Don.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining this call today.
Oh, absolutely.
So questions.
If anybody has questions for the builders and manufacturers, please pop them in the chat, and then we'll read out the best ones and people can answer them.
So I'm going to roll up here. Actually, maybe Tyson can keep an eye on the questions and just kind of jump in with them, or prompt people who've asked to unmute themselves so they can ask it themselves.
Sure. Mike New had a few good questions, so maybe Mike, you can choose whichever one is most alive to you now.
Yeah, great, thanks. I guess I'm mostly interested in how these buildings take into account human and non-human wellness. Like, how are we designing these buildings to enhance the health and well-being of the people living in them and the surrounding environment? What are the materials being used? Are they off-gassing with the plastics and the fiberglass? Are they disconnecting us from the natural electrics of the planet? All those questions, like in the very broad spectrum. What happens to the materials when the buildings collapse? Are we creating a pollution problem in 50 or 100 years' time? So what is the wellness aspects of these buildings?
I can tell you that one of our big markets is for people that have sensitivities to chemicals and gasification of any kind. I don't know how far you are from Vancouver Harbor, but all of those $200 million yachts you see floating around down there in the harbor are built out of the same material that my domes are. And I guarantee you that nobody in those boats is getting sick from the gasification coming off that material. As you know, it can be, every dome we've ever made, and they've been around 35 years now, is still being used. So I can't tell you what we're going to do with them when one breaks down, because frankly, I think that, we say 30 to 40 years, but I really think that's extremely conservative. At some point down the road, if somebody wants to get rid of it, you just chop it up like you would anything made of fiberglass, and that's it.
How about some of the other builders here?
I can address those questions as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Our structure is almost 100% steel. There is some EPS insulation in it, which is not proven in the past to be off-gassing. The structure is 100% recyclable, as EPS is as well, and steel. The other thing is that you can take apart the home and move it to another location and rebuild it. So you essentially never have to throw it into the landfill. That's essentially it.
Does anyone see the ability to raise your hand in this, with the emoji hand thing that comes up? Do you know how to do that?
Or you could just raise your hand.
Yeah, you could do that too, I suppose.
If you go into the participants, you'll see so if you go on the bottom, you press participants, then you'll see the raise hand below everyone.
Okay. Maybe that's another way too. If you've got a question, you can just click the button to raise your hand, and then it'll be easier to see and call on you.
We'd like to hear from some of the other builders too,
Yeah.
and an answer to this question.
If you want. All right, we can move on to another question too. Let's see. I'll let you choose, Tyson, your organizer.
Sure, we have Shay has a question, and then Mark has a question after that.
You want me to say my
Yes.
question? Yeah, okay, got
That'd be
it.
awesome.
I'm cooking, which is why I'm not on video here. Hi, everyone. So I'm wondering, from any of the builders that want to talk about this, do you live or work in the structures or the homes that you create, and why or why not?
We have a certain size family, and our units, I guess I should say, our units are designed to be economical, and that was our real motivation to produce an affordable housing product. And for those of society who require more affordable structures for many different types or many uses. It could be a recreational cabin, or it could be a government run social housing initiative. So myself, I have the funds to have something larger. I live in the city where a lot of these small structures aren't even allowed in Vancouver, unfortunately. So yeah, we don't live in what we build, but we do have a recreational property that I actually am planning on putting 1 or 2 on in the future.
And I agree with everything he just said. I'm blessed to have a home on a beach here in Alaska that I've been in for longer than you were. The young lady that asked the question, probably before you were born. But I do use my domes for recreational purposes. I have one in the Alaska range that's been up there 20 years for my moose and caribou hunting. I have one up in the Misty Fjords on a lake for fishing. And we hunt and fish for everything we eat here in Alaska, or where my family does. Not everybody does, but these things are very, very useful for hunting and fishing lodges, because the more remote, the more extreme the situation, the better they perform, and they're bear proof, which is a big deal. I've been charged by four brown bears in my life, and it's a very exhilarating experience, to say the least. But so I don't live in them with my family, but I do use them a lot. But they're in extremely remote places, and I live in the capital of Alaska, in Juneau, so there's no need for me to live in one.
Norbert, would you like to answer the question?
I can't wait to hear from Norbert.
So mine is because we have on the property Meadow Creek, we have 3 houses. I have one timber frame, which is now the Airbnb, where we used to live in partly, and then the other buildings that was built, the 3 buildings were actually built before I worked for Hammer Creek. And we moved to Caslow 2008. And I thought it would be a short stint until the kids are out of school, but we added so much wood to the house, it looks almost like a timber frame, but it isn't. So one day I want to build another timber frame and move back into it. It has the best feel. It's 99% of the feel of the house, are the timbers, in my opinion, and it is the only renewable resource. That's why I was also drawn to it. I always loved wood, and I know it's a carbon sink while it's standing and while it's being used. So
I know we've got a bunch of people in this chat who also are deeply involved with smart villages or participate in their own. I just recognized Karen Flavel here,
whom we met in Vietnam a few years ago.
Yeah, and I don't think she was doing this before when we met her the first time. So Karen, why don't you introduce your project?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, it's great to be seeing you again, Yubi, and also tuning into your great podcast and seeing lots of familiar friends here, Mark, etc. Hey, Mark. So Casaba, yeah, originally I was sort of looking at what's the container home space, and I created Containerly. I was very passionate and interested in this, and it's great to see the timber projects, like really beautiful design on that one. I can't recall your name, but I love that. But I've actually swung more away from sort of focusing on the construction to look at what's the community element. And so Casaba actually means town in Turkish. And the idea is to really cater for people that are living a flexible life and want the feeling of an intentional community and want a place to spend 2, 3, 6 months a year, but really want to include quite a nomadic way that they live. So we've been creating a structure where there's a shared investment model. So it's a steward investor model. And that sort of gets people to be stewards and get certain, voting rights in decisions that are made on how the village is operating. And then then they can level up to actually have their own tiny home. And then we're very, again, agnostic on the building structure. We're open to all sorts of different ones. So I'll be probably following up with all of you who have posted ones here, because we'd love to include, whatever the best tiny home is for that particular property. So we've been looking at so many different properties, and, depending on the permits and the way the county views this sort of, village, we're going to implement, that. But what's sort of interesting about, I think, about the way that we're doing it, when it's a tiny home on wheels, it actually enables people to own their tiny home and have it on the property, but have the flexibility to move it. So we're sort of separating church and state in that way, and sort of separating land ownership versus land access and community access. So, we'll see. Everything's an experiment right now. We're all out there as pioneers in a new space. And, but yeah, so far what we're doing is we're in contract on a property 2 hours north of San Francisco. And then in December, we're actually starting on a retreat center to do co-work retreats. So, just really sort of trying to fit in with the notion of that sort of flexible nomad lifestyle, but also allowing, ownership and stakeholdership and a deeper relationship to land. So, not just the sort of co-living convenience sort of orientation, but, somewhere where people can actually get involved with bioregional regeneration and, some sort of real connection to land. Because from my research, most people really want a community, somewhere they can grow food, and a community kitchen where they can cook it. That's the 2 top things people are interested in.
Well, I hope the fires haven't impacted you or your family. I know that you've had a terrible, terrible year down there. Best of luck.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm in California now, so I mean, my God, it's just a 24-hour a day, 12 months a year sort of crisis, isn't it? We're all going through.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I also see Mark in the call here, and I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself, and then Mike as well, Mike New.
Sure, I guess there are 2 Marks, but since my first name is just Mark, I'll assume that was coming my way.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. I have been very keen on tiny houses and eco-villages for about 7 or 8 years, and have dabbled with a building system from biotech, one of 4 investors in a project in Greene County that is taking a Colombian system, which is pretty Lego-like. It's basically insulated fiberglass that locks together and allows many permutations. And that's at long last coming on stream in the next several months. The technology is something I'll put a link in to, and it's an example of I guess, what is becoming more and more possible in the way of pop-up villages. Most of my work has been in the area of finding sites that are now encumbered by all sorts of obstacles in terms of red tape and bramble patches of bureaucracy, and through the vehicle of special economic zones, get concentrated reform in, which has the effect of making a lot happen if the governments are in fact keen on following through. So I've worked in about 50 countries on these special economic zone projects, And through the years, been more and more focused on quick start and small scale demonstrations of deep reforms that can then build out in a concentric way and also replicate. So with Jim as part of the Proto-B incubator, and I'm chairman as well, chairman of a group called the Startup Societies Foundation. I've been looking at how to bootstrap from very small locations a kind of inclusive demonstration of new rule sets that can lift the property values for the founders, but very much from the beginning, do it in a way that shared the land value appreciation through community land trusts flows to the benefit not only of the initiators of these projects, but especially to the surrounding community. I think we're at the cusp of potentially a very perilous period where lots of folks are going to be looking for other places to go to as existing systems falter. And these can become either very inspiring examples of a new open way of doing things, or they can become targets and enclaves that add to the sense that people are bailing out and the well-off are having their enclaves that others can't. So what I'm looking for especially are very affordable solutions that can work in a wide range of settings, provided the rules are changed that allow for things like tiny houses on wheels, and innovative building systems to again make much more affordable the housing solutions that people across the spectrum can benefit from. So I'm sorry, that's a rambling intro, but I'm very keen on this. And next month, we will, I understand, Mike and UV have a Plan B oriented gathering in which we can go into more detail on some of these policy reforms and success sharing systems.
Yes, that's right. We're going to have Jim and Mark and a bunch of other people either at the next Smart Village Summit or on another date. Just stay tuned for announcement to dive into these subjects more deeply, into Game B and what sort of a civilization redesign would look like and what are the steps to getting there.
We also did an interview with Jim Rutt a few months back about Game B. So I've got the link for that in the chat as well.
For those who are not familiar with the concept.
Yeah.
By the way, I'd like to compliment you two on your background too. I love my blue dome over your head.
We'd love it too.
Blue flaming dome.
Oh, this dome, yeah. Yeah. It's just a green screen to me, so I don't see it. Mike.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, the project we're working on is called Wild Community, and really it's a bit like a Game B incubator would be one way of describing it. We really wanted to help solve the problem of financing and professionalism in the smart village development. So, we're looking at ways to create open source village technologies to mentor and coach people through the process, to help solve the finance problem with creating investment funds as well as philanthropic funds around village development. We're kind of keen to throw the whole development process on its head and make it more place-based and people-based and community-based, a community-led development process rather than a let's build 100 houses and see who wants to live in it process. So we're very much, I'm based on the east coast of Australia, near Byron Bay. We're very much in startup mode at the moment, so putting teams and legal entities together. We have a first smart village project that we're calling the Natural Living Centre, which we're looking at creating that in Australia, but you know, it's a replicable model and we'll kind of go anywhere that welcomes us. It's a regenerative design and living education centre, but operating in a full smart village. So we're just building out the concept of that at the moment and starting to look for funding for that in Australia. So, you know, there's lots of people on this call that, you know, I'd really love to collaborate with, and I'm in the last week I've been looking into understanding where our place in this ecosystem that's developing around smart villages and around you know, eco villages, you know, where does that sit and what value do we add and who do we collaborate with? How do we open source this and help each other and generate a bit of an income along the way to support us in the transition to Game B?
Thanks, Mike. So I saw a good question from Tanner. I'm going to throw it to Tanner here to ask that question. And then I would like you guys to kind of re-enter your question. Sorry, I've just, I think it was Jubilee who brought to my attention there's a better function to take in questions. So next month we'll do that. But for now, just re-enter your question if we haven't called on you yet. Tanner.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, this is actually my partner's question, but yeah, we were wondering about how many like buildings on property that are shared, libraries, laundry, kitchen, event center, maybe a meditation center.
Tanner, you're cutting out a lot, so I'll just read it for you. Tanner
Go
says,
ahead.
Wondering about what we're thinking about for community buildings like laundry, kitchen, library, event center. These would be available so the tiny homes are even more viable. Actually, my answer to that question is yes, that's a central thing we're planning with the Future Thinkers Smart Village. We want to have these tiny homes and then have a lot of communal environments there. But you can still, if you're introverted, you can still retreat. What I would like to have minimally is like sort of a mini office and then your sleeping area, so that if you want to work privately, you can do that. If anyone else wants to take a crack at that comment question, go for it. And then, okay, so Tyson, we'll throw it back to you to prompt questions here.
Okay. The only other question I have right now is from Mark Frazier. So Mark, if you're still interested in asking your question about 3D printing, would love to hear it.
Sure. It was to see what the options are using something other than regular concrete, which has a terrible carbon footprint, to do 3D printed buildings. If that's something that any here have been looking at.
I think, as I mentioned before, our steel structure is actually 3D printed in a manner with raw flat stock of galvanized steel, and it spits out individual pieces that are cut to fit, labeled, drilled, all ready to screw together into panels. So there's a form of cold rolled 3D technology that we're using.
We've been looking at hempcrete as that material, and if you guys haven't heard of it, it imitates concrete structurally, but it's made out of hemp, so it's carbon negative. It's a huge carbon sink, and of course, you know, hemp is a great material to use. It could be sourced from a waste product from all the pot and CBD farms all over the place, and as you know, pot is legal in Canada, so there's probably a lot of waste material that you can source for hempcrete. Yeah, it can't be used as a structural material, but it's great for, you know, the walls, the insulation between the structural beams.
Are you certain of that?
I'm pretty sure that's the case, yeah.
Is anyone here that has any expertise or experience with hempcrete? Nicole?
Yeah, I was part of a award-winning hempcrete build, a tiny house here in Calgary, Alberta. Well, the competition was down here. We built it up a little bit further north. And the hempcrete itself is not structurally sound, so it does have to be like either formed in, or there's some pretty cool new technologies that have been developed by the captain of our building team, Dion Lefebvre, up in Westlock, Alberta. He has designed a kind of brick that then you can push into between a stick build. So it's pretty cool how it's kind of between two worlds. A nice little bridge kind of thing going on there.
You know, the interesting thing would be where we can combine these efforts, the 3D printing, the domes, hempcrete. Any thoughts on that?
Domes can be made of almost anything. If you watch any National Geographic television at all, and especially on tribes, indigenous tribes around the world, they've been living in domes, only instead of being made of fiberglass, they were made of thatch. I've got a picture of the king of the Zulus sitting in front of his home with his wife sitting next to him knitting. And they've been living in, they look exactly like my domes, only they're made of straw and thatch. And I just watched another show the other night of another tribe further north in Africa that had exactly the same building, but made of palms and sticks. And of course, the Eskimos, as far north as the Arctic, lived in igloos that are dome shaped. So this architecturally, it's the strongest structure on the planet. That's why the Dome of the Rock is still there after 2,000 years. And so if you take those materials that you're talking about that are degradable and can be regenerated, you can build domes with them. It's just a matter of how long they're going to last. People have been living in them for millions of years. Oh, by the way, not only, one of the cool things about our domes is it's not only the oldest structure on the planet, it'll be the ones you see on the moon. We were in the first Star Wars movie. If you go back and look, Luke Skywalker's house was one of our 14-foot domes covered with adobe, and the polar planet was all of our domes. So it's the oldest structure on the planet, but it's the most futuristic. Just had to throw that in there.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
I remember that scene too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to live in a log hobbit village. That's awesome.
Those were our domes.
Cool.
Dude, you should have led with that.
Yeah. That should be your starting pitch. Cool.
Friends of mine here are investigating. There's a technique where you blow up some kind of balloon and essentially spray concrete or some kind of material on top of it, and they've been experimenting with hempcrete with that recently. I don't know how it's going, but I do get I have had the feedback. They're quite excited by the results they're getting.
Yeah, I wonder about hempcrete and thatch. That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just jumping in here. My name's Dakota. One of the things that's been really exciting in the hempcrete world lately that I've been learning about is compaction machines, and using hemp in a much higher compaction density that then creates a lot of additional capabilities. But then jumping back to your question earlier, Mike, I think the domes are really fantastic for all the properties, but then they have some of the hindrances. So the vault becomes a really great simple structure for cost-effective homes. And I think one way we could combine a lot of these technologies is 3D printing the core structure that supports the vault, and then you have your hemp block that's completed. And tiering, like layering the high tech with the low tech, I think is a really, in very, very simple building shapes, I think is a really great way for us to get a lot of traction and save costs.
Cool. Thanks, Dakota.
Awesome. Well, I think we're probably going to wrap this up.
There's a bunch of new questions in here that we can jump to. But yeah, we'll kind of give our closing comments here and then go back to questions, and then we'll wrap up. So again, next month, Game B, futurethinkers.org/summit. If you guys aren't already in our community, you can check it out, and for 2 months, you can keep up with the project. And then Tyson is actually posting a lot of content in there. We're working on a wiki as well to kind of build out resources for this. You can get access there at futurethinkers.org/friend. Check out the podcast. We're doing a lot of episodes related to the content topics that we've talked about lately. And I think that's it, right? Anything I'm missing, Tyson?
Mm-hmm.
Join us Tuesdays at the Weekly Social. Awesome opportunity to connect one-on-one with people, practice collective intelligence around our monthly theme, which next month, like we've mentioned, is Game B and Civilization Redesign. So I'll drop the link where you can RSVP there as well.
Awesome.
It was a real honor meeting all of you folks. I need to bail for a conference call myself. Thank you for the invitation to join you today. I really enjoyed the heck out of it. And I hope we're all able to work together to make this a better planet.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Don.
Yeah.
And for anyone who saw or heard something awesome in this call, please feel free to reach out. And I would love nothing more than to see all of you connecting with each other and working with each other and, collaborating.
Yeah.
www.intershelter.com.
All of the links for the builders will be in the notes from this this chat that Tyson posted, and that will also be available on the wiki at futurethinkers.org/wiki. So Tyson, let's go back to questions just to wrap up here.
Okay, great. So there was a question that I thought would be interesting for the two of you, Mike and Yuvi, to comment on. Mark asked, what kinds of event spaces are startup community builders envisioning?
Event spaces. Well, one thing, Don's going to like this. I wanted to build a kind of a larger geodesic dome event center. And it be kind of a multi-purpose room. We could do conferences there. We could do co-working, maybe a little coffee shop in one area. So just modular, or the ability to change it for whatever needs we have.
Mm-hmm. And having the, a lot of the panels be transparent would be great to let in lots of light. And I love the idea of using a circular building for community events because, a circle is kind of a really good structure for when you have decentralized or distributed leadership, nobody's kind of the focus of the attention. You're just all facing each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. And also, Sam C. had some comments about techniques and technologies.
Oh, I mean, it's at the end of the discussion, but I would like to give feedback about how I felt a bit around this presentation. Like, of course, there is the economic incentives of the builders and manufacturers, and there were, their pitch around their techniques, but I would start with design principles and first principle first, right? Like listening to the land, as some have said, the climate, the geography, and then as Yuvi just made, like what is the purpose of, how do we envision ourselves into the space, right? And then as someone said also, like, what is the life cycle of the materials, right? The environmental impact of harvesting, manufacturing, transportation, the embodied energy, the waste, the labor input, the code compliance, all those things are really important. So I wouldn't jump like on, like containers or techniques or MCRETs, but I would take bird's view first, and then like from pattern to details, as we say in permaculture principles. So that's how I felt, and I would be glad to discuss around design principles of building and community building. So thank you.
Awesome. Sam, thanks. Good comments.
Yeah, that's a great
Well
comment.
said.
Yeah. Last month, our whole theme was on indigenous wisdom. And we ended up talking quite a lot throughout the whole month about how to listen to the land and kind of starting from first principles.
Yeah.
We didn't necessarily talk about kind of that as it related to building structures, but yeah, good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are all recorded, are they not?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they should be available in the community if you guys want to check them out.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I think that's actually a really good closing prompt for everybody to think about and research, rather than, yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. It's been awesome. Thank you everybody for coming. And yeah, you can join us again next month at futurethinkers.org/summit, or join us next week for the more casual community calls at futurethinkers.org/weekly calls. And you can join us in our community.
Weekly social.
Weekly social. Yes, thank you. /weekly social. And futurethinkers.org/friend is where you can join our community. All right.
Thank you all. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks everyone.